Between 1776 and 1965, there were 6 American presidents who went beyond and above the call of duty. They went from the ordinary to the extraordinary. On part 2 of We Are Sinners Saved by Grace, we present President Dwight D Eisenhower, President John F. Kennedy, President Lyndon Baines Johnson. Their words, deeds, and actions, their journey from the ordinary to the extraordinary, landed them a spot in the Democracy Hall of Fame by making the words of Thomas Jefferson come alive. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal.
If you're fighting for the rights of man, you never free from fear. I never know when they're going to pass here and blow this house to bits. We still got thunder telephone calls, the hate mail. But nevertheless, I feel if I'm going to live in this town and live with myself, I must oppose hatred and prejudice in any way that I can.
She was not soft-spoken. She was not humble. She didn't ask. She told. It just blew people's minds. Who is this woman sounding like this? Who does she think she is?
Daisy Bates was willing to suffer the consequences of her action. And when you've been at war, you know that there's a price. She was the one soldier that was willing to put her life on the battlefield for those children.
Motivated by the violence of her own mother's rape and murder, and determined to make a change in the way America viewed race, Daisy Gatson Bates became a revolutionary civil rights activist and leader, making a significant difference in our state. Daisy grew up in the small town of Huttig, Arkansas. She was adopted by Orly and Susie Smith when she was just 7 years old, after her mother's rape and murder by 3 men. Those men were never prosecuted, and this sparked a fire in Daisy that filled her with hate. Her father gave her some advice that would later encourage her to be a leader for change. He said, "Hate can destroy you, Daisy. If you hate, make it count for something. Try to do something about it, or your hate won't spell a thing." Her first chance to do something was in 1941, when she and her husband, Elsie Bates, started their own newspaper called the Arkansas State Press. The paper centered around equal rights for all and became a voice for the African American community. Her influence on the equal rights movement earned her the title of president of the NAACP in 1952. It was during that time that Daisy put her focus on fighting for the same quality of education for all races.
Daisy Bates!
When the desegregation crisis of Central High School occurred in 1957, Daisy's dedication to education made her the driving force behind the cause. She guided and advised the 9 students chosen to attend the all-white high school. She used her home as the meeting place for the Little Rock Nine, planning and implementing how desegregation would be carried out. She became president of the parent-teacher organization even though she did not have a child enrolled at the school. She knew she was an advocate for those 9 students, and she knew that her fight was not just for them, but for the entire African American race. Even though her home was often a target for those who were against desegregation, she never lost sight of her dream for equality, making her a pivotal figure in the civil rights movement and a fearless heroine of our state.
By 1957, Arkansas Governor Governor Faubus was showing no sign of making good on his state's promise of gradual integration. Their proposed plan, known as the Blossom Plan after school superintendent Virgil Blossom, was to integrate slowly, starting with Little Rock Central High School. Daisy Bates, president of the Arkansas NAACP, saw the Blossom Plan as a stalling tactic used to weaken desegregation, and in 1956, the NAACP filed a lawsuit to speed the integration. In the 2 years that followed, Little Rock became a city in crisis. On one side of the conflict sat Orville Faubus and his racist Southern Democratic constituency. On the other, Daisy Bates and the NAACP. And directly in the middle, 9 African-American students whose actions of bravery would set in motion a chain of geopolitical transformations in the U.S. that continues still today. Melba Patillo Beals, Minnie Jean Brown, Elizabeth Eckford, Ernest Green, Gloria Ray Kalmark, Carlotta Walls Lanier, Thelma Mothershed, Terrence Roberts, and Jefferson Thomas. These were the 9 exemplary students chosen by Daisy Bates and the NAACP to force Faubus' hand in following the mandates of the federal government. In the radical effort to stop the students from entering the school, Governor Faubus deployed the Arkansas National Guard to blockade the entrance. The image of soldiers standing face to face with 9 defenseless high school students shocked the country. 20 days later, on September 24, 1957, President Dwight D Eisenhower ordered the 101st Airborne Division to Little Rock to escort the students, and then federalized the Arkansas National Guard out of Faubus' control.
On September 24, 1957, President Dwight D Eisenhower flew from Rhode Island to Washington, D.C. to address the nation about violent resistance to 9 African-American students attempting to integrate Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas. This is the president's 13-minute address where he announced he was sending federal troops to ensure the student safety.
From the President's office in the White House in Washington, D.C., we present a special address by the President of the United States, Dwight D. Eisenhower. Mr. Eisenhower discusses the integration problem at Little Rock, Arkansas. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
Good evening, my fellow citizens. For a few minutes this evening, I should like to speak to you about the serious situation that has arisen in Little Rock. To make this talk, I have come to the President's office in the White House. I could have spoken from Rhode Island, or where I have been staying recently. But I felt that, in speaking from the house of Lincoln, of Jackson, and of Wilson, my words would better convey both the sadness I feel in the action I was compelled today to make, and the firmness with which I intend to pursue this course until the orders of the federal court at Little Rock can be executed without unlawful interference. In that city, under the leadership of demagogic extremists, disorderly mobs have deliberately prevented the carrying out of proper orders from a federal court. Local authorities have not eliminated that violent opposition. And under the law, I yesterday issued a proclamation calling upon the mob to disperse. This morning, the mob again gathered in front of the Central High School of Little Rock, obviously for the purpose of again preventing the carrying out of the court's order relating to the admission of Negro children to that school. Whenever normal agencies prove inadequate to the task, and it becomes necessary for the executive branch of the federal government to use its powers and authority to uphold federal courts, the President's responsibility is inescapable. In accordance with that responsibility, I have today issued an executive order directing the use of troops under federal authority to aid in the execution of federal law at Little Rock, Arkansas. This became necessary when my proclamation of yesterday was not observed, and the obstruction of justice still continues. It is important that the reasons for my action be understood by all our citizens. As you know, the Supreme Court of the United States has decided that separate public educational facilities for the races are inherently unequal, and therefore compulsory school segregation laws are unconstitutional. Our personal opinions about the decision have no bearing on the matter of enforcement. The responsibility and authority of the Supreme Court to interpret the Constitution are very clear. Local federal courts were instructed by the Supreme Court to issue such orders and decrees as might be necessary to achieve admission to public schools without regard to race and with all deliberate speed. During the past several years, many communities in our southern states have instituted public school plans for gradual progress in the enrollment and attendance of school children of all races in order to bring themselves into compliance with the law of the land. Thus they demonstrated to the world that we are a nation in which laws, not men, are supreme. I regret to say that this truth, the cornerstone of our liberties, was not observed in this instance. It was my hope that this localized situation would be brought under control by city and state authorities. If the use of local police powers had been sufficient, our traditional method of leaving the problem in those hands would have been pursued. But when large gatherings of obstructionists made it impossible for the decrees of the court to be carried out, both the law and the national interest demanded that the president take action. Here is the sequence of events in the development of the Little Rock school case. In May of 1955, the Little Rock School Board approved a moderate plan for the gradual desegregation of the public schools in that city. It provided that a start toward integration would be made at the present term in the high school, and that the plan would be in full operation by 1963. Here I might say that in a number of communities in Arkansas, integration in the schools has already started, and without violence of any kind. Now this Little Rock plan was challenged in the courts by some who believed that the period of time as proposed in the plan was too long. The United States Court at Little Rock, which has supervisory responsibility under the law for the plan of desegregation in the public schools, dismissed the challenge, thus approving a gradual rather than an abrupt change from the existing system. The court found that the school board had acted in good faith in planning for a public school system free from racial discrimination. Since that time, the court has on 3 separate occasions issued orders directing that the plan be carried out. All persons were instructed to refrain from interfering with the efforts of the school board to comply with the law. Proper and sensible observance of the law then demanded the respectful obedience which the nation has a right to expect from all its people. This, unfortunately, has not been the case at Little Rock. Certain misguided persons, many of them imported into Little Rock by agitators, have insisted upon defying the law and have sought to bring it into disrepute. The orders of the court have thus been frustrated. The very basis of our individual rights and freedoms rests upon the certainty that the President and the executive branch of government will support and ensure the carrying out of the decisions of the federal courts, even when necessary, with all the means at the President's command. Unless the President did so, anarchy would result. There would be no security for any, except that which each one of us could provide for himself. The interest of the nation and the proper fulfillment of the law's requirements cannot yield to opposition and demonstrations by some few persons. Mob rule can not be allowed to override the decisions of our courts. Now let me make it very clear that federal troops are not being used to relieve local and state authorities of their primary duty to preserve the peace and order of the community. Nor are the troops there for the purpose of taking over the responsibility of the school board and other responsible local officials in running Central High School. The running of our school system and the maintenance of peace and order in each of our states are strictly local affairs, and the federal government does not interfere except in very special cases and when requested by one of the several states. In the present case, the troops are there pursuant to law solely for the purpose of preventing interference with the orders of the court. The proper use of the powers of the executive branch to enforce the orders of a federal court is limited to extraordinary and compelling circumstances. Manifestly, such an extreme situation has been created in Little Rock. This challenge must be met, and with such measures as will preserve to the people as a whole their lawfully protected rights in a climate permitting their free and fair exercise. The overwhelming majority of our people in every section of the country are united in their respect for observance of the law, even in those cases where they may disagree with that law. They deplore the call of extremists to violence. The decision of the Supreme Court concerning school integration, of course, affects the South more seriously than it does other sections of the country. In that region, I have many warm friends, some of them in the city of Little Rock. I have deemed it a great personal privilege to spend in our Southland tours of duty while in the military service and enjoyable recreational periods since that time. So from intimate personal knowledge, I know that the overwhelming majority of the people in the South, including those of Arkansas and of Little Rock, are of goodwill, united in their efforts to preserve and respect the law even when they disagree with it. They do not sympathize with mob rule. They, like the rest of our nation, have proved in two great wars their readiness to sacrifice for America. And the foundation of the American way of life is our national respect for law. In the South as elsewhere, citizens are keenly aware of the tremendous disservice that has been done to the people of Arkansas in the eyes of the nation, and that has been done to the nation in the eyes of the world. At a time when we face grave situations abroad because of the hatred that communism bears toward a system of government based on human rights, it would be difficult to exaggerate the harm that is being done to the prestige and influence, and indeed to the safety of our nation and the world. Our enemies are gloating over this incident and using it everywhere to misrepresent our whole nation. We are portrayed as a violator of those standards of conduct which the peoples of the world united to proclaim in the Charter of the United Nations. There they affirm faith in fundamental human rights and in the dignity and worth of the human person. And they did so without distinction as to race, sex, language, or religion. And so, with deep confidence, I call upon the citizens of the state of Arkansas to assist in bringing to an immediate end all interference with the law and its processes. If resistance to the federal court order ceases at once, the further presence of federal troops will be unnecessary, and the city of Little Rock will return to its normal habits of peace and order, and a blot upon the fair name and high honor of our nation in the world will be removed. Thus will be restored the image of America and of all its parts as one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good night, and thank you very much.
The long, treacherous walk of the Little Rock Nine ultimately ended in a victory for the NAACP, the integrity of the U.S. Constitution, and black students throughout the South that for all of American history had been subjected to deplorable limitations in their pursuit of education. The legacy of their resolve has been immortalized in the mythos of American history, but their walk hasn't ended. In 1999, while presenting each of the Little Rock Nine with the Congressional Medal of Honor, President Bill Clinton issued a warning. Segregation is no longer the law, but too often separation is still the rule. To Today, children of every race walk through the same door, but then they often walk down different halls. They sit in different classrooms. They eat at different tables. They even sit in different parts of the bleachers at the football game. Though Faubus is gone, his vile notions of inequity persist in our education system still today. It is the role of the current generation to continue the walk of the Little Rock Nine, to shoulder that same cross boldly through the valley of shadows, and to stop only when sunlight has illuminated every ridge, cleansed every cavern, and the rivers of knowledge flow generously to every child that pursues them.
Should not be forcibly integrated or forcibly anything, and we do have a right to say we do not like it.
It was here at Little Rock Central High where 9 students galvanized the American Civil Rights Movement.
We were in constant state of terror.
Most remarkably, it was all orchestrated by one person.
You know who I mean? Daisy Bates!
We'll sit in until we can eat in any corner in the United States.
Here is Daisy Bates not being an assistant, but being the leader.
At a time when women were expected to be silent, she was unafraid to speak the truth.
She was the one soldier that was willing to put her life on the battlefield for those children.
In a place where injustice was enforced by fear, she would not compromise.
I feel if I'm going to live in this town and live with myself, I must oppose hatred and prejudice.
Pioneer, leader, citizen, Daisy Bates, First Lady of Little Rock.
Good evening, my fellow citizens. This afternoon, following a series of threats and defiant statements, the presence of Alabama National Guardsmen was required on the University of Alabama to carry out the final and unequivocal order of the United States District Court of the Northern District of Alabama. That order called for the admission of 2 clearly qualified young Alabama residents who happened to have been born Negro. That they were admitted peacefully on the campus is due in good measure to the conduct of the students at the University of Alabama who met their responsibilities in a constructive way. I hope that every American, regardless of where he lives, will stop and examine his conscience about this and other related incidents. This nation was founded by men of many nations and backgrounds. It was founded on the principle that all men are created equal, and that the rights of every man are diminished when the rights of one man are threatened. Today we are committed to a worldwide struggle to promote and protect the rights of all who wish to be free. And when Americans are sent to Vietnam or West Berlin, we do not ask for whites only. It ought to be possible, therefore, for American students of any color to attend any public institution they select without having to be backed up by troops. It ought to be possible for American consumers of any color to receive equal service in places of public accommodation, such as hotels and restaurants and theaters and retail stores, without being forced to resort to demonstrations in the street. And it ought to be possible for American citizens of any color to register and to vote in a free election without interference or fear of reprisal. It ought to be possible, in short, for every American to enjoy the privileges of being American without regard to his race or his color. In short, every American ought to have the right to be treated as he would wish to be treated, as one would wish his children to be treated. But this is not the case. The Negro baby born in America today, regardless of the section of the state in which he is born, has about 1/2 as much chance of completing a high school as a white baby, born in the same place on the same day. 1/3 as much chance of completing college. 1/3 as much chance of becoming a professional man. Twice as much chance of becoming unemployed. About 1/7 as much chance of earning $10,000 a year. A life expectancy which is 7 years shorter, and the prospects of earning only half as much. This is not a sectional issue.
Difficulties over segregation and discrimination exist in every city, in every state of the Union, producing in many cities a rising tide of discontent that threatens the public safety. Nor is this a partisan issue. In a time of domestic crisis, men of goodwill and generosity should be able to unite regardless of party or politics. This is not even a legal or legislative issue alone. It is better to settle these matters in the courts than on the streets, and new laws are needed at every level. But law alone cannot make men see right. We are confronted primarily with a moral issue. It is as old as the Scriptures and is as clear as the American Constitution. The heart of the question is whether all Americans are to be afforded equal rights and equal opportunities, whether we are going to treat our fellow Americans as we want to be treated. If an American, because his skin is dark, cannot eat lunch in a restaurant open to the public, if he cannot send his children to the best public school available, if he cannot vote for the public officials who represent him, if, in short, he cannot enjoy the full and free life which all of us want, then who among us would be content to have the color of his skin changed and stand in his place? Who among us would then be content with the counsels of patience and delay? 100 years of delay have passed since President Lincoln freed the slaves, yet their heirs, their grandsons, are not fully free. They are not yet freed from the bonds of injustice, not yet freed from social and economic oppression. And this nation, for all its hopes and all its boasts, will not be fully free until all its citizens are free. We preach freedom around the world, and we mean it. And we cherish our freedom here at home. But are we to say to the world, and much more importantly, to each other, that this is a land of the free, except for the Negroes? That we have no second-class citizens, except Negroes? That we have no class or caste system, no ghettos, no master race, except with respect to Negroes? Now the time has come for this nation to fulfill its promise. The events in Birmingham and elsewhere have so increased the cries for equality that no city or state or legislative body can prudently choose to ignore them. The fires of frustration and discord are burning in every city, north and south. Where legal remedies are not at hand, redress is sought in the streets, in demonstrations, parades, and protests, which create tensions and threaten violence and threaten lives. We face, therefore, a moral crisis as a country and a people. It cannot be met by repressive police action. It cannot be left to increase demonstrations in the streets. It cannot be quieted by token moves or talk. It is a time to act in the Congress, in your state and local legislative body, and above all, in all of our daily lives. It is not enough to pin the blame on others, to say this is a problem of one section of the country or another, or deplore the facts that we face. A great change is at hand, and our task, our obligation, is to make that revolution, that change, peaceful and constructive for all. Those who do nothing are inviting shame as well as violence. Those who act boldly are recognizing right as well as reality. Next week, I shall ask the Congress of the United States to act, to make a commitment it has not fully made in this century to the proposition that race has no place in American life or law. The federal judiciary has upheld that proposition in a series of forthright cases. The executive branch has adopted that proposition in the conduct of its affairs, including the employment of federal personnel, the use of federal facilities, and the sale of federally financed housing. But there are other necessary measures which only the Congress can provide, and they must be provided at this session. The old Code of Equity Law under which we live commands for every wrong a remedy. But in too many communities, in too many parts of the country, wrongs are inflicted on Negro citizens and there are no remedies at law. Unless the Congress acts, their only remedy is the street. I am therefore asking the Congress to enact legislation giving all Americans the right to be served in facilities which are open to the public: hotels, restaurants, theaters, retail stores, and similar establishments. This seems to me to be an elementary right. Its denial is an arbitrary indignity that no American in 1963 should have to endure, but many do. I recently met with scores of business leaders, urging them to take voluntary action to end this discrimination. And I've been encouraged by their response. And in the last 2 weeks, over 75 cities have seen progress made in desegregating these kinds of facilities. But many are unwilling to act alone. And for this reason, nationwide legislation is needed if we are to move this problem from the streets to the courts. I'm also asking Congress to authorize the federal government to participate more fully in lawsuits designed to end segregation in public education. We have succeeded in persuading many districts to desegregate voluntarily. Dozens have admitted Negroes without violence. Today, a Negro is attending a state-supported institution in every one of our 50 states. But the pace is very slow. Too many Negro children entering segregated grade schools at the time of the Supreme Court's decision 9 years ago will enter segregated high schools this fall, having suffered a loss which can never be restored. The lack of an adequate education denies the Negro a chance to get a decent job. The orderly implementation of the Supreme Court decision, therefore, cannot be left solely to those who may not have the economic resources to carry the legal action or who may be subject to harassment. Other features will be also requested, including greater protection for the right to vote. But legislation, I repeat, cannot solve this problem alone. It must be solved in the homes of every American, in every community across our country. In this respect, I want to pay tribute to those citizens north and south who've been working in their communities to make life better for all. They are acting not out of a sense of legal duty, but out of a sense of human decency. Like our soldiers and sailors in all parts of the world, they are meeting freedom's challenge on the firing line, and I salute them for their honor and their courage. My fellow Americans, this is a problem which faces us all, in every city of the North as well as the South. Today, there are Negroes unemployed 2 or 3 times as many compared to whites. Inadequate education, moving into the large cities, unable to find work, young people particularly out of work without hope, denied equal rights, denied the opportunity to eat at a restaurant or a lunch counter or go to a movie theater, denied the right to a decent education, denied almost today the right to attend a state university even though qualified. It seems to me that these are matters which concern us all, not merely presidents or congressmen or governors, but every citizen of the United States. This is one country. It has become one country because all of us and all the people who came here had an equal chance to develop their talents. We cannot say to 10% of the population that you can't have that right. Your children can't have the chance to develop whatever talents they have. That the only way that they are going to get their rights is to go in the street and demonstrate. I think we owe them and we owe ourselves a better country than that. Therefore, I'm asking for your help in making it easier for us to move ahead and to provide the kind of equality of treatment which we would want ourselves. To give a chance for every child to be educated to the limit of his talent. As I've said before, not every child has an equal talent or an equal ability or equal motivation, but they should have the equal right to develop their talent and their ability and their motivation to make something of themselves. We have a right to expect that the Negro community will be responsible, will uphold the law, but they have a right to expect that the law will be fair, that the Constitution will be colorblind, as Justice Harlan said at the turn of the century. This is what we're talking about, and this is a matter which concerns this country and what it stands for. And in meeting it, I ask the support of all of our citizens. Thank you very much.
Gather round, people, wherever you roam, and admit that the waters around you have grown. Accept it that soon you'll be drenched to the bone. If your time to you is worth saving, then you better start swimming or you'll sink like a stone. For the times, they are changing. And critics prophesize with your pen, and keep your eyes wide, the chance won't come again. And don't speak too soon, for the wheel's still in spin, and there's no telling who that it's naming. And the loser now will be later to win, for the times, they are changing. Senators and congressmen, please heed the call. Don't stand in the doorways, don't block up the hall. For he that gets hurt will be he who has stalled. There's a battle outside and it's raging. It'll soon shake your windows and rattle your walls. For the times, they are changing. Mothers and fathers throughout the land, don't criticize what you can't understand. Your sons and your daughters are beyond your command. Your old road is rapidly aging. Please get out of the new one if you can lend your hand. For the times, they are changing. It is drawn, the curse it is cast. The slow one now will later be fast, as the present now will later be past. Your old road is rapidly fading, and the first one now will later be last. For the times, they are changing.
You are breaking the injunction by not allowing these people to come inside this courthouse and wait. This courthouse does not belong to Sheriff Clark. This courthouse belongs to the people of Dallas County, and these are the people of Dallas County, and they have come to register. And you know this within your heart, Sheriff Clark. You're not as evil a man as you act. You know in your heart what is right. You just refuse to do it because you want these people behind you. And as sheriff of this county, if you're deeply concerned, you will go call the registrar rather than keep people from standing inside. What you're really trying to do is intimidate these people, and by making them stand in the race, keep them from registering to vote. And this is a kind of violation of the Constitution, the violation of the court order, the violation of decent citizenship. You can turn your back on me, but you cannot turn your back upon the idea of justice. You can turn your back now and you can keep the club in your hand, but you cannot beat down justice. And we will register to vote because as citizens of these United States, we have the right to do it.
That's what I'm looking at.
Precisely right. And if they're not fit to vote, you'll be able to find that out. But you'll not know it until they're on the registrar. And many of those have a felony action because Sheriff Clark made them a felony action, not because they were rightfully issued. You don't have to beat us. Get out of here. You don't have to beat us. Get up, arrest us if we're wrong, don't beat us. Get up. If we're wrong, arrest us. If we're wrong, arrest us. Let us to the gospel. If we're wrong, arrest us. We're wrong, arrest us. Arrest us if we're wrong. You beat me in the side and then hide your blow. I don't want you to leave. We've come to register to vote. You don't refuse to register. What kind of people are you? If we're wrong, we're not it's not a matter of being from the devil, it's a matter of facing yourself and facing your God. Let's be in this court. Come on, let's be in this court. Belongs to all the citizens of the county.
Mary Lilleboe's mother was a martyr of the civil rights movement.
It's my mom's picture, and it says, well-behaved women rarely make history.
Viola Liuzzo, a Detroit housewife and mother of 5, would become part of history.
If she had something to say, she said it. If she felt something needed to be done, she did it. And she saw Bloody Sunday and just had to do something about it.
It was Sunday, March 7th, 1965. Alabama police beat 600 demonstrators as they marched for voting rights. These images spurred Liuzzo to drive to Selma and join the protesters.
Mrs. Liuzzo was struck and killed.
As Liuzzo was driving along a pitch-black country road, Ku Klux Klansmen pulled up to her car and shot her to death. She was 39. Her daughter Sally was only 6.
Dad looked at me and just started screaming, "Mama's dead, Mama's dead."
Viola Liuzzo was the only white woman the Klan murdered during the civil rights movement.
Mrs. Liuzzo went to Alabama to serve the struggles for justice. She was murdered by the enemies of justice.
Her death helped further the cause. 5 months later, President Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act.
55 years ago, a few of God's children attempted to march from Brown Chapel AME Church across this bridge. We were beaten, we were tear gassed. I thought I was going to down this bridge. But somehow, in some way, God Almighty kept me here. We cannot give up now. We cannot give in. We must keep the faith. Keep our eyes on the prize. We must go out and vote like we never, ever voted before. Some people gave more than a little blood. Some gave their very lives. So to each and every one of you, especially you young people, the fraternities and sororities. Yes, sir. You look good. You look colorful. Go out there. Speak up. Speak out. Get in the way. Get in good trouble. Necessary trouble. And help redeem the soul of America. And each and every one of you. I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to give in. I'm going to continue to fight. We need your prayers now more than ever before. Let's do it. Let's do it. Selma is a different place. America is a different place. But we can make it much better. We must use the vote as a non-violent instrument or tool to redeem the soul of America. Thank you very much. Good to see you.
Members of the Congress, I have the great pleasure, the highest privilege, and the distinguished, and I might also say personal honor, of presenting to you the President of the United States. Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, members of the Congress, I speak for the dignity of man and the destiny of democracy. I urge every member of both parties, Americans of all religions and of all colors, from every section of this country, to join me in that cause. Rarely in any time does an issue lay bare the secret heart of America itself. Rarely are we met with a challenge, not to our growth or abundance, or our welfare or our security, but rather to the values and the purposes and the meaning of our beloved nation. The issue of equal rights for American Negroes is such an issue. And should we defeat every enemy, and should we double our wealth and conquer the stars, and still be unequal to this issue, then we will have failed as a people and as a nation. For with a country as with a person, what is a man profited if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Our fathers believed that if this noble view of the rights of man was to flourish, it must be rooted in democracy. The most basic right of all was the right to choose your own leaders. The history of this country, in large measure, is the history of expansion of that right to all of our people. Many of the issues of civil rights are very complex and most difficult. But about this there can and should be no argument. Every American citizen must have an equal right to vote. There is no reason which can excuse the denial of that right. There is no duty which weighs more heavily on us than the duty we have to ensure that right. Yet the harsh fact is that in many places in this country, men and women are kept from voting simply because they are Negroes. Every device of which human ingenuity is capable has been used to deny this right. The Negro citizen may go to register only to be told that the day is wrong, or the hour is late, or the official in charge is absent. And if he persists, and if he manages to present himself to the registrar, he may be disqualified because he did not spell out his middle name, or because he abbreviated a word on the application. And if he manages to fill out an application, he is given a test. The registrar is the sole judge of whether he passes this test. He may be asked to recite the entire Constitution or explain the most complex provisions of state law. And even a college degree cannot be used to prove that he can read and write. For the fact is that the only way to pass these barriers is to show a white skin Experience has clearly shown that the existing process of law cannot overcome systematic and ingenuous discrimination. No law that we now have on the books, and I have helped to put 3 of them there, can ensure the right to vote when local officials are determined to deny it. In such a case, our duty must be clear to all of us. The Constitution says that no person shall be kept from voting because of his race or his color. We have all sworn an oath before God to support and to defend that Constitution. We must now act in obedience to that oath. Wednesday, I will send to Congress a law designed to eliminate illegal barriers to the right to vote. The broad principles of that bill will be in the hands of the Democratic and Republican leaders tomorrow. This bill will strike down restrictions to voting in all elections. Federal, state, and local. Which have been used to deny Negroes the right to vote. This bill will establish a simple, uniform standard which cannot be used, however ingenious the effort to flout our Constitution. It will provide for citizens to be registered by officials of the United States government. If the state officials refuse to register them. It will eliminate tedious, unnecessary lawsuits which delay the right to vote. Finally, this legislation will ensure that properly registered individuals are not prohibited from voting. I will welcome the suggestions from all the members of Congress. I have no doubt that I will get some on ways and means to strengthen this law and to make it effective. But experience has plainly shown that this is the only path to carry out the command of the Constitution. To those who seek to avoid action by their national government in their home communities, who want to and who seek to maintain purely local control over elections, the answer is simple. Open your polling places to all your people. Allow men and women to register and vote whatever the color of their skin. Extend the rights of citizenship to every citizen of this land. There is no constitutional issue here. The command of the Constitution is plain. There is no moral issue. It is wrong, deadly wrong, to deny any of your fellow Americans the right to vote in this country. There is no issue of states' rights or national rights. There is only the struggle for human rights. I have not the slightest doubt what will be your answer. But the last time a president sent a civil rights bill to the Congress, it contained a provision to protect voting rights in federal elections. That civil rights bill was passed after 8 long months of debate. And when that bill came to my desk from the Congress for my signature, the heart of the voting provision had been eliminated. This time, on this issue, there must be no delay or no hesitation or no compromise with our purpose. We cannot, we must not refuse to protect the right of every American to vote in every election that he may desire to participate in. And we ought not, and we cannot, and we must not wait another 8 months before we get a bill. We have already waited 100 years and more, and the time for waiting is gone.
Gather round, people, wherever you roam, and admit that the waters around you have grown. Accept it that soon you'll be drenched to the bone. If your time to you is worth saving, then you better start swimming or you sink like a stone. For the times, they are changing. Writers and critics prophesize with your pen, and keep your eyes wide, the chance won't come again. And don't speak too soon, for the wheel's still in spin, and there's no telling who that it's naming. And the loser now will be later to win, for the times, they are changing. Senators and congressmen, please heed the call. Don't stand in the doorways, don't block up the hall. For he that gets hurt will be he who has stalled. There's a battle outside and it's raging. It'll soon shake your windows and rattle your walls. the times they're changing. Come mothers and fathers throughout the land, don't criticize what you can't understand. Your sons and your daughters are beyond your command. Your old road is rapidly aging. Please get out of the new one if you can lend your hand, for the times they are changing. The line it is drawn, the curse it is cast. The slow one now will later be fast, as the present now will later be past. Your old road is rapidly fading, and the first one now will later be last, for the times they're changing.
You're listening to Electrify Mojo, Rare Moments. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you wish to subscribe, hit the subscription button. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you wish to subscribe, hit the subscription button. If you wish to subscribe,